Do you want to learn how to play Pokemon in person? Well, stick around because I'm going to show you all the tips and tricks and all the basics of how to play Pokemon TCG. Alrighty, so you're going to start with a 60 card deck. Now this 60 card deck is comprised of 4 different types of cards. You're going to have your Pokemon, your trainer, your energy, and a singular ace-spec card. We will talk about all of these in great detail. However, you can only have 1 ace-spec per deck, and there's multiple different types of like trainers, Pokemon, energy, and we're going to break it all down for you real quick. Let's start with Pokemon. So there's 3 main types of Pokemon. You are going to have basic Pokemon, EX Pokemon, and Mega Pokemon. Essentially, these are just 3 different tier levels. So your basic Pokemon are not going to be as strong, not have as much HP. However, they also only give up 1 prize card. So if you knock out a basic Pokemon, you only get 1 prize card. Let's take Solrock and Lunatone, for example. Both of these are basic Pokemon, and not just because in the corner it says basic, but also because they are not an EX or a Mega. They do have certain abilities and attacks though. For example, Lunatone does have an ability called Lunar Cycle, where you discard 1 fighting energy and you get to draw 3 cards off the top of your deck. Then you have Solrock, who as long as Lunatone is in play, you are able to do 70 damage for 1 fighting energy. This is where basic Pokemon can be very helpful, especially in early game. Now, some basic Pokemon, such as Charmander, can evolve into Charmeleon and then into Charizard. Now, this cannot happen the turn that Charmander is played. You have to wait a turn and then you can evolve it either into Charmeleon or use special item cards to skip Charmeleon and go straight to Charizard. Then we have EX Pokemon. Let's take Fezandipiti for example. Now Fezandipiti EX has 210 damage, is a dark type Pokemon, and it is a basic Pokemon, meaning it can go from my hand to my bench. Fezandipiti has an ability called Flip the Script. So if my opponent knocks out one of my Pokemon in the previous turn, I can draw 3 cards off of Flip the Script. I can also use Fezandipiti's attack Cruel Arrow, where for 3 colorless energies I can deal 100 damage to my opponent's active or benched Pokemon. Now, when my Fezandipiti is knocked out, my opponent can take 2 prize cards because it is an EX Pokemon. Sometimes EX Pokemon are evolved Pokemon. For example, we do have a Terra Charizard EX, which you do have to evolve from Charmander or Charmeleon. Now, Mega Pokemon are some of my favorite. They do the most damage, they have the most health, however, they also are the most risk. So let's take Mega Lucario for example. Mega Lucario for 1 energy can do 130 damage while holding 340 health. This is great because I can swing for 130 with 1 energy, and if I have used Lunatone's Lunar Cycle ability, I can take that discarded energy and put it onto my bench. However, if my Mega Lucario is knocked out, my opponent will take 3 prize cards. Now, trainer cards consist of 4 main types. You're going to have item cards, supporters, stadiums, and Pokemon tools. These all are used just a little bit different. They all have just a little bit of different effects, so we're going to walk through all of them individually. Let's start with item cards such as Fighting Gong and Ultra Ball. Now, Fighting Gong allows you to search through your deck for a fighting energy or a basic fighting Pokemon. Now, when this card says basic, it is talking about the stage of evolution that that Pokemon is in. For example, I can Fighting Gong out a Riolu, but I cannot Fighting Gong out a Hariyama as it is a stage 1 Pokemon. Then we have Ultra Ball, which is discard 2 cards from your hand and get any Pokemon out of your deck that you would like. For example, I could get a Riolu or a Hariyama or a Mega Lucario with this card. If I so wish, I can pick any Pokemon out of my deck to grab at a time. Item cards like these are very, very helpful, and they can be used as many times as you wish, including on your first turn. If you were the very first turn of the game, you can play as many item cards as you wish. Now, supporters are where things get a little weird. So supporters, if you go the very first turn of the game, you cannot play a supporter. You also cannot attack, but we will get into that a little bit later. But a supporter card can be played once per turn, and supporters do things such as shuffle your hand back into your deck, draw 6 cards if you've taken a prize card. If you still have all 6, you get 2 extra cards, so you can draw 8. There's currently a supporter out there right now that says shuffle your hand, put it at the bottom of your deck, and draw the same number of prize cards that you already have. There is a supporter called Arvin at this time that you can search for an item in a tool card. And then we have Hilda, which allows you to search for an evolution Pokemon in any energy, whether it's basic or special energy that you wish. Now, stadiums affect everybody in play, and both trainers can use them. So for example, Artisan, search for a basic Pokemon once per turn. Artisan can go back and forth, and both trainers can use Artisan whenever they need to find a basic Pokemon throughout their deck. However, if I play a Gravity Mountain, the Artisan goes back to the discard pile of the player who played it, and then Gravity Mountain takes over, meaning that every Stage 2 Pokemon in play now has 30 less health. Stadium cards can be very helpful in a deck and can even be preventative measures with stadiums such as Battle Cage to protect your bench Pokemon from damage being placed on them. Notice that I said place and not damage being done. Those are two separate things. So Pokemon tool cards are attached to Pokemon to give them special abilities such as lower their retreat cost by 2 or do 50 more damage like Maximum Belt. These cards are very helpful and very heavily played as they do give your Pokemon special ability and special advantages within the fight. Let's talk about A-Specs. So A-Specs are powerful trainer cards such as Unfair Stamp and Secret Box, which allow you to do very powerful things very quickly. Let's take Secret Box for example. Secret Box is discard 3 cards and search for one of every type of trainer card within your deck. So what this allows you to do is find an item card, a tool card, a stadium, and a supporter all in one go. Anything that you like. While Unfair Stamp shuffles your deck, both you and your opponent's hands back into your deck, and then you draw an unfair amount of cards. These tools can be very helpful not only just in hand disruption, but being able to find what you need very, very quickly, and they are very powerful tools within the Pokemon TCG game. So now, energy cards are super important. That's what allows you to actually attack in the game. So what we do with energy cards is we have 2 different types. We have basic energy cards. Now, basic energy cards are unlimited. You can have 52 in your deck. If you want to, that's fine, whatever you want. However, they only provide 1 energy of 1 type to 1 Pokemon at a time. Now, special energy cards are a little bit different. They provide energy and an effect, or maybe even multiple energies based on what the card is. Now, you'll have to read through the cards to kind of see them a little bit, but I am going to talk about Mist Energy. Mist Energy provides a colorless energy, and then it prevents all effects from attacks from your opponent's active Pokemon. What does this mean? So an effect from an attack is anything underneath the attack in a text box that is not describing how the damage of the attack works. For example, if the attack has like a plus or a times next to the number for the damage, that means that underneath it, that text is describing the damage. However, if it says place 2 damage counters per card in your hand on your opponent's active Pokemon, that is an effect because there is no damage already being dealt from the attack. These are very, very, very important distinctions to know because Mist Energy can shut down a deck like Alakazam right where it's at. Righty, so we went through all the types of cards. Now let's talk about sleeving our cards up for the first match. Now, we have spent a lot of time doing research, we have spent money trying to find these cards, and now we're built our deck. Let's protect it. We have spent a lot of money, we've spent a lot of time. Let's protect our cards, okay? So what we're going to do is you're going to put them in something called sleeves. Now, I know this can be a little intimidating, and I'm actually going to show you how to even put them in sleeves. But sleeves are a protective measure, so that way you don't have to worry about your cards getting destroyed. I personally am running Dragon Shield sleeves. These are the dual-sided sleeves, so if you see the inside's black but the outside's blue, that is just an extra layer of protection. I shuffle kind of hard, and I don't like marking my cards. Marking is just like whenever there's like a piece on the sleeve. It can also happen if you don't have sleeves on. You can mark the cards like while you're shuffling and stuff, and it's not on purpose, and we all know that it's not on purpose, but it happens. So you sleeve your cards so that way you don't have a marked card. So to sleeve a card, I'm going to pull this out real quick. This is just a basic Premium Power Pro. But what you're going to do is you're going to take the sleeve and you're going to move it. Do you see how my finger, I moved them in 2 different directions and it pulls the sleeve apart? You put the corner in and push it down. Now, with these, I'll just push it the rest of the way in. If it's a more expensive card, you can kind of tap it and it'll slide down in the sleeve. Personally, again, unless it's an expensive card, I just push it down. It's not the end of the world, but that is how you sleeve a card. Please make sure that you are protecting your deck. This is expensive cardboard, and we want to use this for a while. We don't want this to be something that, you know, ends up going to crap in like 3 games, and then we can't play with this deck anymore that we've spent. I mean, 50 to 60 bucks is a normal price on a deck that's not glammed out. What glammed out means is like there are special cards within the Pokemon TCG. Example is this nest ball. It's gold, it's shiny, and it's a full art. Like the whole card is the art, but they're also a little bit more expensive, and we just don't want to ruin those. So, okay, we have built this beautiful deck. We have put it in some sleeves to protect our cardboard. Let's talk about shuffling. Now, when we are shuffling, at all times and forever, you want to make sure the back of the cards are facing you. So, for example, if I'm shuffling, the blue is what I'm going to see, not this side. The reason being is you want it to be random, and you're not supposed to know what you're going to draw off the top. Ever, ever, ever. Not even have an inkling of an idea. So when you're shuffling, always make sure that the back of the cards are facing you and the top of the cards are facing the table, not your opponent, because you can also give away information by shuffling where your opponent can see into your deck. Now, when we are shuffling, there are 3 main types of shuffling within Pokemon TCG. The first type is a rifle shuffle. Now, I am not a fan of this. This is also known as a bridge shuffle. I'm just not a fan of it. It bends your cards over time. I'm going to put a video over here that it shows it, but you're going to see I'm not even using Pokemon cards because I don't want to bend my cardboard. I want to keep my cards in good condition. I want this deck to last me a lifetime, not just until the riffle shuffles ruin the sleeves and the cards and it's not fun no more. My preferred method, mass shuffling, is where you take half the deck and you open up your hand just a little bit and you take the half the deck that you pulled out and you mash it back into the half the deck that's still in your hands, and you do this multiple times. I prefer to grab from the back and then the front and then the back and then the front, making sure that that top card of my deck is always changing to show my opponent, hey, I am not trying to stack my deck. I know, like, even if you know that top card, like, even if you need it, I don't know, A, ever, but B, even if I did, I'm still not gonna, it's still gonna be a randomized thing. I am being fair to you. You want your opponent to always feel like you are shuffling sufficiently to have a randomized deck. You don't want them to feel like you know what's on top and like you want to keep what's on top. I'll be blunt with you guys. I've been in situations literally within the past week where I have had to tell somebody who's been playing Pokemon for years, like, hey dude, you're not changing the top of your deck. Like, you're not actually shuffling because the top 3 cards are not changing. And while that was not a very pleasant conversation, it is something that people are willing to call you out on because it is cheating. Then we're going to have pile shuffling. Now, pile shuffling is only recommended between games. I recommend doing 8 piles. The reason I recommend this is because you can have 4 of each card. So if you have, let's say, 4 Lily's Determination and 4 Iono in your deck, you're going to have the 4 Lilies on the top, the 4 Ionos on the bottom, and then when we go to shuffle them amongst each other later, it's going to allow you to fully have randomization rather than it being a little clunky. Now, while we're talking about cheating and the top card of your deck, and like, there are ways to cheat, like I've already stated, but a great way to show your opponent, hey, I'm not that dude, is saying, hey, will you cut my deck? Now, what cutting your deck is they will take like a piece of your deck, about half of it typically. Sometimes I do thirds depending on the opponent. I know that sounds a little shady, but sometimes like I know people and I know better. So if I don't feel like you've sufficiently shuffled, I will stack yours into a third instead of just halves. However, it just shows your opponent, hey, I'm not cheating. And it's just a respectful thing to do before you start the game. Just always, always, always ask. And if you're not cheating, it's not a big deal either way. Now, before we start the game, we have to do one last step. That is, we have to decide who is going to go first. Now, first turn has a couple of rules, and we're going to go over those in just a minute. However, you or your opponent are going to say heads or tails, and you will either flip a coin or roll a dice. If you roll a dice, evens or heads, odds or tails. Don't ask me why, I did not make that rule. But evens or heads and odds or tails. It's just how it is. Once you guys decide who is going first, you may start the game. To start the game, you will draw 7 cards. Now, of those 7 cards, we are going to be looking for a basic Pokemon. Not a stage 1, not a stage 2, but a basic. So, if you do not have a basic, this is called a mulligan. What you are going to do is you are going to show your opponent your hand and say, hey, I don't have a basic, this is a mulligan. And what your opponent is going to do is say, okay, and you will shuffle your hand back into your deck and draw again. Now, you will have to keep track of how many mulligans each player's had. And if there is, let's say that I've mulliganed once, you didn't mulligan at all, you get an extra card for not mulliganing. So once I have that, my basic Pokemon back in the active, you get to draw a card. Make sure you're keeping up with that. If it's happened more than once, make sure you have a dice out. So that way it's like, okay, I've mulliganed twice. Oh, he's a mulligan 3 times. Just in case, because after so many times, you do get what's called a judge ball. So what that is one of the judges of the tournament or the league or whatever will come over and give you a basic to start with. It's very, very rare that we get to that point, but every once in a while it happens. Now, the first turn, you are not able to play a supporter or attack. So what you can do is, as always, you will do this every single turn, is you will draw a card. Now, once you draw a card, you're able to use item cards and you're allowed to attach 1 energy. But because it's your first turn again, you cannot use a supporter and you cannot attack. Those are your only 2 restraints. With that being said, there are some situations where you get to where you can, let's say, poison the opponent's active Pokemon with an ability, and that is allowed, and they will take damage from that. There have been a couple of ways that people have manipulated this into, okay, my opponent's active Pokemon is now poisoned, I have a special stadium in play that ups poison damage, and my active Pokemon ability makes my opponent's active Pokemon take more damage, meaning that first turn they're poisoned. With those other 2 factors combined, they're knocked out with the in-between check-in damage. We will get into poison condition a little bit later. However, typically there's not really a way to do damage the first turn. So you can attach your energy, you can play as many item cards as you would like, but you cannot attack and you cannot play a supporter. Now, second turn, you can play a supporter and you can attack. However, you are not able to evolve typically. Let me explain. So a Pokemon must be in play for at least 1 turn before it can evolve. What does that mean? So if I play a Chikorita this turn, I have to either attack or pass, which means I didn't have the energy to attack, so I have to pass. And then my opponent has to play out their turn, and then it come back to me before I can evolve that Chikorita into a Bayleaf, or until I can use an item card such as Rare Candy to skip Bayleaf and go to Meganium. There also is a stadium called Force of Vitality that will allow you to kind of go boom, boom. And Grand Tree will allow you to do the same thing in a weird way, but Grand Tree is an A-Spec card and Force of Vitality only works on Grass-type Pokemon. I almost said Leaf-type Pokemon. I guess it's the same thing, but you get the point. So there is not a way around. You have to wait at least 1 turn for a basic Pokemon to evolve. Even if it's using something like Force of Vitality, Grand Tree, they still both require you to wait a turn. Now, for the 3rd turn, and every turn after, this is the way it plays out. You draw a card. You can attach 1 energy from your hand to a Pokemon per turn. You can play 1 supporter card per turn. You can play as many items as you would like. You can use abilities from your Pokemon, all the things. And at this point in the game is when it gets fun. Because you can use supporters, you're free to go. You can just start playing the game, going back and forth. However, this is at the time when typically you're going to get affected by something called special conditions. These 5 things can be either really annoying or really helpful. It all depends on the way that you're using it to your advantage. Now, poison is marked with a poisoned marker, and typically poison is the effect of an ability or an attack. Now, what this means is that when your Pokemon is poisoned, in between turns, what's called check-in occurs. Now, what check-in is you look for special conditions such as poison and burn. where they deal damage. So in between turns, you will take 10 damage naturally from poison. There are some cards that up the damage. However, for the most part, you are going to just be taking 10 damage per turn unless those cards are in play. Now, I want to show you, we do mark it with dice, so we would just put this one piece right on top of my whatever active Pokemon who is poison. The way that we cure poison is going to be by retreating it or evolving the Pokemon. Let's talk about burned. Now, burned is marked with the burn coin. These coins are coming from the Elite Trainer boxes or the trainer toolkits that come out every so often, per set typically. And then you do 20 damage between turns for burn. Now, burn is a little different. You will flip a coin between turns, heads or tails. If heads, you're still burned, or if heads, you're cured, and if tails, you're still burned. Now, this is important because this is one of the few special conditions that is the way that it works. Burn and sleep are going to be the only two that you flip a coin between turns to see if the special condition is still there. Let's talk about a paralyzed Pokemon. Now, paralyzation is one of the rarest but the most annoying special conditions. So a paralyzed Pokemon cannot retreat and cannot attack. The way to get around this is cards like Switch or Giovanni, where you can switch your Pokemon from the active to the bench, because once a Pokemon hits the bench, all special conditions are gone. So that is the only way to get out of this situation. However, at the end of your turn, your Pokemon goes back to normal and not being paralyzed anymore. Let's talk about the sleep condition. So if your Pokemon is asleep, you cannot retreat, you cannot attack, and you will turn your Pokemon card to the left. Now, the way that sleep works is that in between turns, you will flip a coin to see if your Pokemon is still asleep. And again, if you use an item card such as Switch to get that Pokemon out of the active, it is no longer asleep. Confused. Now, confused is one of the more common ones, and for confusion, you will flip your Pokemon card completely upside down to where the artwork is towards you. Now, when you are confused, you can still retreat and you can still attack. However, when you go to attack, you will have to flip a coin. If heads, the attack goes through. If tails, you do 30 damage to yourself. To cure it, you move the Pokemon to the bench or you evolve it. Something I did not think about till just now, this is some last minute tips. So when you are attaching energy cards or item cards to your Pokemon specifically, you have to make sure that the item card is visible or the energy is visible. I'm going to show you a couple of videos while I explain why. So the reason that you want to make sure that the item card is fully visible or the energy is fully visible is because some item cards have effects like taking away damage or adding health to the active Pokemon it's attached to. The reason this is important is because if we don't see it, and then you later think you've knocked it out and you've not, it can cause problems in game, and depending on the judge call, it can result in penalties as well as a loss for the match. However, the same thing applies with energy, because some attacks are based off of how much energy is attached to the active Pokemon on both sides of the field. So just make sure, for both your credibility as a player, but also just fairness of the game, make sure everyone can see what's attached to your Pokemon. Don't be shady. It's not that difficult. Come on now. Alrighty, I've kind of went through everything. I don't think I'm missing anything. Let me know down in the comments. Did I miss anything? I don't think I did, but y'all, like, seriously, I do. I miss things. I'm only human. So let me know down below if you have any questions, even if you're like I'm an experienced player, but I really don't know the answer to this question. I'm an experienced player and I may not know the answer to it, but I promise you I have people in my inner circle who are judges who will gladly answer any questions I have, and I will gladly pass that information on to you, because the more that we all know, the better that we can all play, and the less we have to call a judge at a tournament, because nobody likes waiting for a judge at a tournament. But anyways, make sure you like, subscribe, comment, all the things, and let me know, what do you want to see next? I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.